What is up, you beauties? My name is BatchatBegins, and welcome back to the channel. Now, today we're going to be talking about what I think was potentially one of the worst tanks in the game prior to patch 8.7, and that is the Tortoise. Now, this tank had absolutely nothing going for it besides DPM. It had a very significant amount of DPM, but the problem was its on-the-move accuracy was terrible. Its accuracy in general was terrible. It had no armor, it had no mobility, and that meant that it could only go to one side and basically just die. That was its only goal, was to try and be effective with the DPM as much as it could before inevitably succumbing to the tier 10s or a flank from the mediums. But that is no longer the case for this tank because it did receive a fairly significant buff in 8.7. But before we do get into the armor buff that it did receive, we're going to go ahead and talk about the statistics of the tank. Now, overall, when using the top gun, the Tortoise has just over 3600 DPM if you are running calibrated. Now, if you're running rammer, you can get this thing up to 3900 DPM, which is very, very nice for the tier. But I'll be very honest with you, it does have poor pin, in my opinion, especially if you are trying to shoot at some of the super heavy tanks. You can be a little bit inconsistent with the gun, and considering this thing does still have that weakness of on the move accuracy, would definitely recommend sticking to calibrated shells. Now, it doesn't have great concealment. That's another problem. So sniping at the back, you can get spotted, and it is fairly easy to go ahead and take advantage of a Tortoise when it is out in the open. So I would recommend playing this thing sort of mid to front line if you can, just trying to get yourself solid cover so that if you are flanked, you can go ahead and turn and focus the flanker and not have to deal with a, two-pronged attack, because this thing obviously only has all of its armor at the front and not the sides. So obviously decent penetration, decent damage, you got heavy tank alpha, and the real problem is that aim time, 3.8 seconds. Man, I really, really do not like that aim time. And its on-the-move accuracy is really, really poor, as you'll see in the replays we've got coming up. But you do have 10 degrees of gun depression, and that can lead to some rather nice angling, as you will see here. We've got the armor inspector pulled up here on the computer, and we're shooting at the Tortoise with an E50M. And as you can see, on flat ground, when the E50M is just shooting APCR, it's not too bad. And obviously, if you're angled like this and you have something covering this hatch, this is a fairly decent tank when they're shooting just APCR at it in tier 10 mediums. And even if it switches to heat, as you can see, I mean, you can angle it out. Like, if you have something to block that hatch, you can bait out a shot, and it's kind of a tricky pin when you get it to this side. I mean, you obviously will get pinned, but I mean, you have the DPM to deal with it now. If they are going to switch and dab to the 2 key, obviously you're going to have to try and bait out a shot first. That's going to be a little bit difficult, but if you manage to bait out a shot, you can pull it around and go ahead and take out the enemy. Now, another trick you can do when you're hull down on this side is, because of how fat this gun mantlet is, if you are on a hill, you can actually pull up or pull back and try and block the shot with your gun mantlet, and that could be a very nice play as well. So as you can see, the armor is definitely a lot better than it used to be. I mean, just look at this armor. Like, it is just so much better than it used to be. And we're going to show you just how effective the Tortoise can be in patch 8.7 in a couple of replays here. So let's just go ahead and hop into it. All right, first replay we got today, we're here on Rockfield. Playing in the Tortoise, we are only one of 2 tier 9s, us and the Object 84, that new tank that came out in patch 8.7, going to the T100 LT. If you wanted to see my review on it, it is back on the channel. Go ahead and check it out. It is a great tank, but we're here to talk about the need for speed, the Tortoise itself. And as you can see, we are going to go ahead and get started here. And they have mostly dangerous medium tanks. I wouldn't say that their heavies are particularly strong. ST1 is certainly a good tank, but having 2 Action X's, if we can get near them, we can have a pretty good brawl, and we do outtrade them. So I'm more worried about going ahead and taking out the mediums, hence why I'm headed to the medium flank. C is usually the stronger side of the map. If you have a good presence here, you can definitely make a greater impact on the game as opposed to having your entire team go A. And you will see here in a second that their heavy tanks do actually end up going to A, just the Carnarvons. But in this case, their SD1 actually does come to the medium side. So we kind of have to figure out who we're going to focus here in the beginning. Now, of course, I am very slow. So in this point, you have to decide, well, where are you going to position so that you can be effective? Well, I can go rush the mediums, but it's going to take me a minute, so I'm going to go ahead and assist my allies while I do have the chance. And as you can see, I'm letting this thing aim all the way in, because you'll see the accuracy is quite poor when you do decide to snap it on the move. As you can see, I'm making sure to check my surroundings, and because of that, I didn't aim in all the way, and as you can see, the poor accuracy on the move really screwing this tank over. So yes, you do have to aim in as much as you can, just to guarantee those shells. But now that we've gone ahead and dealt with the Carnarvons and they backed up sufficiently, once again, you know, the on-the-move accuracy showing just how poor it can be. But because of that, we've gone ahead and pushed up a little bit more. Can't see the Carnarvon Action X anymore. So right now, all we're going to try to do is just hope that the CDA doesn't pin us and just try and move towards the medium tanks and be effective here. Now, another great thing about the Tortoise is it actually does have fairly decent HE pin. You know, it has that hash. And because of that, we were able to go ahead and put a nice finishing shot into the 54E1. And we're going to try and get a follow-up hash shot here on the T49. Now, the Tortoise does have a frequent problem, at least when I play it, of low rolling. And if we hadn't gotten that fire, the 49 would have gotten away. So it is nice to have that hash option just to go ahead and get some kill confirmations and make sure that we do carry this game. So right now, I could have shot a hash into the rear of the ST1, but I'd much prefer to make sure that this guy dies as quickly as possible. Now, the reason being is because if those Carnarvon Action X's and, well, if the Carnarvon Action X and the regular Carnarvon do overwhelm our flank, I'd really prefer this guy be dead early on so that we can just go ahead and steamroll the rest of his team. So as you can see, we've done a fairly decent job of cleaning up here on the flank. They had a 54E1, 49, T54 lightweight, and that ST1. A lot of our teammates did die over here, but we were able to go ahead and make a significant difference on this side just by being here. And as you can see, we're just working with our fellow Tier 9 here, the Object 84, just to finish off this last tank destroyer here on the flank. Tried to go for Hesh, and unfortunately can't pin the CDA in the front, which I guess is a good point for the CDA. You're going to have to review that tank sometime. But we do go ahead and finish off this clutch, saving our Object 84 in the process. Just getting our boy a little bit more credits than he would have got if he had died. So, as you can see, first victory of the day. Nets us about 4.4k damage, which surprisingly is a mastery. I mean, usually even in Tier 8, a little bit difficult to get a mastery with 4.4k, but because the Tortoise is a bit of a skill gap tank, it is one of those things where it's not as easy to play the tank as a lot of people have shown. And so the mastery bar for this tank is surprisingly low. But the next game we have for us today is the Tortoise here on Desert Sands. And because I told you it's not that great to have the Tortoise out in the open, we're actually just going to go ahead and push it to the seaside, because we have a ton of DPM and we have houses that can cover our weak spots and a lot of things that can keep us from being flanked. So not only is this a benefit for us to go and get cover, but we can also make use of our DPM against more immobile targets, is how I'll put it, because obviously like a 5100 and a T34 are more immobile than say a Lorraine or a Chimera that they have on the enemy team. So another one of those weaknesses that you just want to try and counteract with the Tortoise. Where can you put this tank so that you can succeed? And in this case, it is here in the town. As you can see, their 50 TP and their T34 have both come over here. And we're just going to try and muscle our way through here, try and get past the Tiger and the WZ 111, and just start trying to make use of this crazy gun. Now, of course, if the 50 TP or the 5100 does pull out, bit of a lucky shot, I will say, on the 5120, just because, as you've seen, that on-the-move accuracy is not that great. So what we're doing here is just trying to get some shots into the 50 TP on the side. The more astute of you will notice that the Lorraine and the Chimera are actually on this side of the map, so we're going to get a flank onto them very quickly with our medium tanks, meaning that I need to get up here and just provide a distraction while I can Now, I was trying to go ahead and get a shot into the waffle, but unfortunately, I think my track got a little stuck there on the house. But that is fine. We have the DPM to make up for it. It's not like we're in a 60 TP or an E100 where we're losing out on a lot of DPM if we do miss like that. We can get out damage like that with the T49, with the Hesh. And as you can see, the Hesh is coming in clutch again for us, getting a 405 roll. And as you can see, the one thing about the Tortoise that really ruined it beforehand is people didn't really even have to bother aiming at it before. All they had to do was pull out and shoot, and you basically confirmed that you were going to pin this tank. But now people actually have to bother sitting there to aim, and that gives you a chance to at least get one, maybe even two shots out on the enemy tanks. And as you can see, we're going to go ahead and take advantage of this 5120. He's been way over aggressive with us, bled a lot of his HP, and that's going to give us the opportunity to go ahead and bully him and the rest of his team. As you can see, I'm just trying to put my gun in the way of my hatch, wiggling it back and forth, and luckily, thanks to our Lorraine, we do get a bounce on that guy. We could have gone for Hesh here, but I just wanted to go ahead and guarantee our damage here at the end. Unfortunately, we are going to come out with a very, very solid game here on Desert Sands. And this is where, as you can see, the gun is misbehaving a little bit. And I'll show you just another example of the accuracy on this tank. I sit here, I aim, and it doesn't even hit him. It doesn't even bounce him. It just doesn't hit him at all. So, as I said, be careful with this tank. Position it where you can have hard cover, where you can scrape off tanks that are trying to flank you, and or hold against just one side instead of two. And also, make sure that you're aiming in your shots to make them count. You can wiggle and bounce their shot first so you can guarantee that you have the time to aim, but just make sure that your DPM is counting, and that way you'll be able to get games like this. 4.9k, only first class this time, so I guess the bar's being set a little bit higher thanks to people playing it more thanks to the buff. But I would definitely recommend you check this tank out. This tank is very, very strong now, in my opinion. Definitely not something you're going to win in every time, but definitely deserved the buff that I got in 8.7. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. My name has been BatchatBegins, and I will see you guys in the next one.